for young boys in particular, there's an adverse risk associated with the vaccine. It's like a 2 to 4-fold increase in the instances of myocarditis.
Yes, but you know what?
Hospitalization.
You know that there's an increased risk of myocarditis among that age cohort from getting COVID as well, which exceeds the risk of myocarditis from the vaccine.
I don't think that's true. No. I don't think it's true that there's an increased risk of myocarditis from people catching COVID that are young versus increased risk of myocarditis from the vaccine.
No, there is.
Myocarditis is more common after COVID-19 infection than vaccination. But is this with children?
12 to 17.
12 to 17 more likely to develop myocarditis within 3 months of catching COVID at a rate of 450 cases per million infection. This compares to 67 cases of myocarditis per million at the same time following their second dose of Pfizer.
Yeah, so you're about 8 times likelier to get myocarditis from getting COVID than from getting the vaccine.
That's interesting.
Now, that
is not what I've read before, but also it's like, even when we're reading these things, it's like, what are we getting this from? Was this from the VAERS report? But even from the VAERS reports, when they report this stuff, it's like the amount of people that report, it's the underreporting.
Joe Rogan interviewed a doctor, a disease expert, infectious disease epidemiology, a guy named Michael Osterholm. Rogan had him on and he interviewed him, but the clip that I'm going to tag onto the end of this is Joe Rogan talking about how amazing, miraculous, and valuable vaccines are. It was less than 2 years ago. He's lost his mind with all that Spotify money.
No, so that's what we need to do here. We need to just have straight talk. Don't tell them it's low risk. That's like the hurricane, okay? I would be really mad at you if I thought you were a hurricane forecaster and you knew this was coming, but you kept telling me, oh, it's low risk, don't worry about it.
I hope this wakes people up to the value of vaccines, too. There's so many wackos out there that think that vaccines are, a scam, or they're dangerous, or there's so many people out there that won't vaccinate their children. If you're like 21 years old and you say to me, should I get vaccinated? I go, no.
He's lost his mind with all that Spotify money.
If you're a healthy person and you're exercising all the time and you're young and you're eating well, I don't think you need to worry about this. Turns out I got COVID. So we immediately threw the kitchen sink at it. All kinds of meds, monoclonal antibodies, ivermectin.
One of those drugs he mentioned, ivermectin. CDC says there's no evidence it works on COVID. Its increased usage has only led to a substantial increase in overdoses after a push by some on the far right.
He's lost his mind with all that Spotify money.
As this TikToker has demonstrated, Joe Rogan used to be a big advocate of vaccines, but now he's doing this weird character arc where he is skeptical of the coronavirus vaccine and seems to think that he doesn't need it. And a lot of this really stems from his sort of need to be skeptical and reasonable and seen as like taking both sides. But the reality is, when it comes to things like taking the vaccine versus taking any type of alternative medicine, the reality is that alternative medicine is not going to do what the vaccine does. And in most of the cases, that alternative medicine is either going to do nothing or actively cause harm, like some of the fake cures that have been pushed forward by a lot of right-wingers. You see, the thing with Joe Rogan is that Joe Rogan has an audience and he has to cater to that audience. And this is where there's sort of this dual role where Joe Rogan has an influence over his audience, but if he says something that he thinks his audience isn't going to like, then he knows he's going to lose listeners.
270 health experts wrote an open letter to Spotify, raising concerns about COVID misinformation being spread by Joe Rogan on his podcast.
Now, the group wants Spotify to take action against Rogan's wrong information by developing a misinformation policy.
The letter states that throughout the COVID-19 pandemic, Joe Rogan has repeatedly spread misleading and false claims on his podcast, provoking distrust in science and medicine. He has discouraged vaccination in young people and children, incorrectly claimed that mRNA vaccines are gene therapy, promoted off-label use of ivermectin to treat COVID-19, contrary to FDA warnings, and spread a number of unsubstantiated conspiracy theories. Why does it matter what Joe Rogan says? Why does it matter if he's wrong about myocarditis? Why does it matter if he says it's okay to take ivermectin? Why does it matter that he tells young people that they shouldn't be vaccinated? Because Joe Rogan has a massive audience. More people listen to Joe Rogan's podcast than watch the top-rated cable news shows. Whether we like it or not, people are getting their news from Joe Rogan, and that news needs to be accurate.